Good afternoon, everyone. My name is K.J. Purushothaman. I'm a partner with KPMG in India. Today's topic is extremely relevant and very pertinent, considering the current state of the economy and the pandemic as well. Before I go to the esteemed panelists, I would like to thank ET Telecom for organizing this event. I would like to first introduce my panelists and then set the entire context for the discussion, which I'm quite sure is going to be extremely engrossing. My first panelist is Shri Sunil Kumar Gupta. He's Secretary Telecom, Secretary TRAI. He has, during his tenure, chaired multiple panels and work streams in the area of internet governance, expert committee on NGN, as well as IPv6, and also been instrumental in driving a framework for redressal of complaints on telecom of the customers. Welcome, sir, and thank you very much for being part of the panel. Mr. P. Balaji, who is the Chief Regulatory and Corporate Affairs Officer with Vodafone Idea, is a renowned authority in the telecom industry on telecom and regulatory policies. We thank you, sir, for being part of the panel to share your thoughts on the areas impacting the industry. Thirdly, I've got Mr. Rajan Matthews. He's the Director General of COAI, a body that closely works with the telecom industry as well as telecom companies and provides a perspective on policies impacting the industry. Thank you very much, sir. I head the telecom vertical for KPMG. And during my course of discussions with our clients, as well as what we are seeing from an industry perspective, I just wanted to first set the context by first, trying to explain what is actually happening around the world. The fact that how telecom has clearly been a differentiator. This topic, which is the role of telecom being pivotal, is very pertinent during the lockdown situation. Firstly, because this crisis itself is unprecedented. Secondly, the fact that there is tremendous surge in data, content, and the role of telecom as not only a connectivity provider has really emerged. From a B2C perspective, the telecom service providers are seeing a surge in traffic. There are statistics that are floating around that the growth in telecom and the data is in excess of 40%. But not only that, the role of telecom service providers as an enabler for providing enterprise solutions is something that has widely emerged. Remote work from home, social distancing, and the role of telecom industry in enabling the business continuity management is something that is very important and something that has been established. Telecom services have also helped in seamless connectivity of employees across not only India but also worldwide, and you are able to see the work being executed with the same amount of rigor by all the employees around the world. However, from an organization perspective, there are two factors where we see there is some amount of transition that is happening. The impact on customer experience is completely transforming. The role of telecom providers as a digital service provider is something that is emerging. The innovative enterprise solutions being provided by telecom service providers are helping companies to achieve some of the innovation in the industry. Cloud, which was something that sections of the industry were slightly rigid and a thought process that was not very well accepted prior to COVID, is being transformed. Cloud is now everything. Cloud is where we are seeing a lot of traction across the entire industry. AI and emerging tech is helping companies to actually achieve only the imagination. At the same time, there is a lot of risk also that is being addressed while all these solutions are being deployed. We have to be conscious that all these solutions have been deployed within a very, very short period of time. And hence, cyber and data privacy are certain risks that are being addressed by the industry as we progress. A lot of emphasis is also coming on cost and how every organization is able to manage cost. I would like to first thank TRAI and the Telecom and the Department of Telecom to actually enable certain regulatory policies to facilitate this to happen. Thank you very much, sir. Uh, Before I actually go to Mr. Gupta, I would like to take a perspective from Mr. Balaji on, how is he seeing and how has Vodafone Idea played a critical role in driving some of these initiatives. And also, I would like him to highlight some challenges that they have faced and any specific asks that he might have from not only TRAI, but also the wider enterprise community. Over to you, Mr. Balaji.
Thank you very much, Purushottam, and to ET for organizing this wonderful webinar. I guess I'll start with a personal statement. I think I feel humbled and I consider it an honor to have been part of this industry right from the inception of mobility over 25 years ago. And I think during that 25-year time frame, we've seen many challenges. And I think as a sector, as government, as regulator, we've worked, collaborated to overcome all those challenges. And I would say the toughest one, if I were to say in terms of time frame, have been the last 2.5 months during the pandemic. And the way the entire sector has come together as one has been very, very heartwarming and, as I said, very humbling as well. The fact is that the telecom networks have today, by providing seamless voice and data connectivity, provided a kind of a lifeline to over 1.3 billion people during this pandemic. I think ET and others, and even the regulator, Mr. Gupta, as well as the DOT, have recognized the unsung heroes, the network heroes of our industry, those who have toiled tirelessly in very difficult situations, traveling tens to hundreds of kilometers in order to make sure the networks were working 100%, or in fact 130%, thanks to the significant spike in data and voice traffic that happened during this time. But overall, I would say that in an extremely difficult situation, the people have held, and because the people have held together, the teams have held together, organizations like ours and other operators and vendors and tower companies have held together. So with skeletal staff, these networks have been chugging very smoothly in spite of the spike that you, Purushottam, very rightly talked about. It has meant, obviously, rediscovering new ways of making sure these networks keep working, because we had virtual war rooms set up. We had huge amount of capacity that we had to put up in some cases where the traffic was moving, shifting from offices to residential areas. So we, for example, in VIL, Vodafone Idea Limited, put up massive MIMO technologies that are, cutting edge in order to make sure that huge capacities could get added. And therefore, by doing so, you could provide the window to the outside world to individuals at one hand, and the other side to the enterprises. We could provide them solutions to stay connected for economic activities, providing them a whole suite of digital tools and secure tools and cloud solutions at very affordable prices in order to make sure that they could stay connected and keep their operations going. During this journey, as I said, we've had huge amount of support from the regulator and the operators in many ways, and we are really grateful for the same. I would say that innovations have been undertaken by organizations, including ourselves. We did artificial intelligence-based customer care handling, given that the number of care queries had gone up on WhatsApp. We started looking at digital ways of moving money between distributors and the 1.2 million retailers that we had. At least half of them, they continued to operate during this time. Therefore, it was important that you could move the money through digital means rather than physical means in order to make sure that the customers were connected. On the consumer fronts, the bottom of the pyramid consumers that were really struggling, for them, we actually opened out free talk time. We provided for connectivity, incoming connectivity, even beyond the expiry of the recharge period. Some of these things we did very proactively because we thought that that is the right thing to do for us to make sure that people could stay connected. I guess few interesting things. In the past, we would talk about peak hours being 6 to 8 hours. Frankly, the peak hours have just gone up to become almost 20 hours of the 24 hours. That's the kind of traffic pattern which has changed. Uh, and of course, the fact that as a operator community, we work very closely with each other has ensured that wherever we have shared infrastructure in terms of tower and other fiber assets, we've been able to kind of collaborate and keep the network up and going all this while. I would only say that um, uh, that India is now seeing a new normal, and that's something that we all talk about. And therefore, the role of telecom has become even more important at this stage, whether it is for ourselves to become more efficient and facilitate work from home for our employees, but more importantly to larger enterprises, the IT sector. If today there is the call given by large operator, each large IT players like TCS saying they will have 75% people work from home in 2025, then it's on the basis of us as operators and stepping up and making sure that we can take that kind of challenge and make sure it can actually happen. So all in all, very challenging but exciting times, a humbling time that we were able to pull this off. Of course, there are certain requests that we have because, as everybody knows, these are challenging times financially for the sector. Everyone is knowing it. The regulator is aware of it. The government is aware of it. We are quite hopeful that as we go through this new journey, new normal, that we will continue to have the blessings and support on some of the liquidity requests that the industry has made through COAI to operate to the government. We are quite sure that some of the requests that we made and has been supported in the past by regulator on reducing the tax burden on the sector will be taken care of. And on the liquidity front, I would just start by saying that there is GST input credit lying with the government, and any ability for us to avail of some soft loans against using billions of dollars of input credit lying with the government would be a big help for this sector, which is essential service, and where investment in order to take care of this huge enhancement in utilization of data and voice is very required. With that, I will hand it back to you, Purushottamam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Balaji. Balaji actually summed it very well. Actually, he's talking about the new normal, the role of telcos in the new normal, which is the which is about digitization. We have always been talking about a digital India. In one way or the other, India has actually that India is capable of running the entire economy digitally, and telecom service providers have actually been a big contribution. I'll move to Mr. Rajan. Mr. Rajan, from an industry-wide perspective, what are the specific things that you are seeing from your interactions with not only service providers but also with the regulators? And are there any specific challenges where you would require intervention from the regulator as well? Over to you, Mr.
Thank you, Puru. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yeah. Okay. I think one of the things that has very clearly emerged is the close cooperation among all of our operators, our member operators, which are Jio and Airtel and Vodafone Idea, and the DOT and the regulator. We have learned that the old silos simply can't continue if we are to meet the challenges of daily changes in network load factors and uses and things happening. So I think that was very key in terms of the learning. And I'm happy to say that not only did our operators pre-plan, because obviously we had gotten some intelligence from our OEMs and elsewhere from international areas. So the business continuity planning was put in place much before the peak of the COVID came in. So our operators operating alongside our OEM and our vendors had put in place business continuity processes and plans, which is very helpful. So we had our war rooms already set up. Now the DOT did a similar thing. So they also had a war room situation where the local term cells in each of our licensed service areas had already been set up as the key conduit to begin to start coordinating activities from the central area to the local area. So as an example, one of the areas where we had initial difficulty was the moving of our people who were maintaining our towers, delivering the diesel, moving parts, logistical exercises that Balaji referred to. There were very many instances when in the local level, the police were not informed, passes were not recognized, letters of authorization were not passed out in time. And so very quickly, within a couple of days, because of the close coordination between the central DOT, the local term cells who worked very closely then with the local legal enforcement people, the police, this was really quickly sorted out. Another area of very close cooperation was various compliance requirements that were in place. Obviously, remember, this is the quarter end as well as a year end. So all manner of compliance reports due to the DOT, due to the TRAI. So we worked with the DOT to get a push out of those compliance. One, obviously, was the AGR, and the DOT gave us permission, our operators permission, to push the compliance out to April 15. So that was very helpful in allowing our operators to get the logistics in place. We went to the TRAI, and the TRAI was very helpful in helping us in very many of the compliance reports that had to go to the TRAI, and those were also pushed out. So the load factor on the operators from the compliance end was reduced. So that allowed operators to focus on the critical issues of maintaining uptime of the networks, dealing with the daily changes in load factors on the networks, as well as then looking at the logistics. Another thing I want to highlight in terms of an example of the close working relationship that emerged in terms of this time period was when we started seeing spikes of about 30+% on our networks. The operators were able to analyze that, and Balaji talked about artificial intelligence and monitoring, and our network operations centers being on top of this, very quickly realized that this load factor was emerging from streaming video. Obviously, not a surprise as people moved to their homes and started using these applications. So very quickly, we went to the DOT and asked them to request people like Amazon and YouTube and all of this to go from high def to standard definition. And I'm happy to say that even the DOT secretary himself picked up the phone and started calling people, and that's how urgently it was treated. And very quickly, the load factors on our networks were brought down again so that we could manage it. So very, very key examples of the close working relationship between the industry, between the DOT, and between the regulator. And that was a significant help in being able to manage in this COVID situation. You asked about the challenges. I think one of the things that we very clearly saw, the after effects of the right-of-way problems that we have been crying hoarse about. We found that obviously, as people were trying to utilize our networks from the areas in the home areas, the residential areas, we have had challenges in terms of putting up cell towers in these areas. And this has now become hopefully clear that we need to ensure that our cell towers that provide the coverage and the capacity need to be put up in all of the key areas if customers want to have a quality experience. Second thing that we also became painfully aware of is the fact that so little of our cell towers are fiberized. And again, fiber, we recognize, allows a certain amount of dynamism to come in terms of the adjustment of our bandwidth. And again, it's only 25% or so of our cell towers that have connectivity via fiber. And again, this has become a problem area, which becomes a challenge, which hopefully we can begin to address more keenly as we go forward. The tremendous amount of money that is being asked of operators for putting up cell towers, for getting permissions. In some areas, they're asking us to pay almost 1 crore rupees per kilometer to lay fiber, all right, in terms of various charges and fees. Now, with those types of fees, you will not allow us to put in place the adequate infrastructure. So I think the challenge in terms of right of way, putting our cell towers, putting fiber, getting the clearances in time, getting approvals in time, the SACPA process, all of these are becoming critical areas we need to look at post-facto. The other area that Balaji highlighted very clearly is saying is that, look, it is going to be very, very clear that these demands on our network in terms of traffic is not going down. All right, this is a global phenomenon, and we experience it in spades in India because of our population and the density of our population. The demand for our services is going to continue to rise exponentially. What does that mean? That means that operators are going to have to continue to make the investments in our networks, in the radio access part of our network, the core of our network, in the backhaul. I'd like just to highlight that in the last 4+ years, we have not received any additional backhaul spectrum. Now, you can imagine what that will do in terms of constraining this. So these types of challenges have to be met. The investments in the network have to be recognized. And so therefore, we have to address the financial viability of our operators. This is something that we've highlighted. We're very glad that the regulator has, in fact, so moto raised this. So it's not as if these issues are unknown. And we are very happy to note that now the finance ministry itself has recognized the fact, the challenge. The question is, can we please implement what is recognized universally, that we have to make investments, the liquidity issues of our operators have to be addressed. The government cannot continue to extract 30% of every rupee that comes into the business. These factors are the ongoing challenges the industry faces that must be addressed if we are to continue to meet the essence of our networks, which is saying is that today, I saw a report that we are in this particular environment contributing 30% to GDP. That is a phenomenal percentage. You know, that in this COVID, when everything else is being shut down, the operator networks contribute 30%. In normal times, we contribute about 6% or so. Look at this. So hopefully this begins to take effect in terms of the realization in our decision makers in government that this is a industry that has to be nurtured, that has to be developed and allowed to grow and mature into the new generation when we're talking about all the new applications and 5G and all of artificial intelligence and cloud computing, a plethora of innovations that are to happen. And we continue to implore the government, please free our hands to make these a reality for the citizens of this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. I think that was very well articulated as a few requirements or challenges that the operators are facing. Shri Gupta, I think the consensus that's actually coming through is that obviously NDCP refers to it. NDCP refers to there is reference of digital infrastructure being an essential commodity. There is also discussions that Mr. Balaji and Mr. Matthews have done and referred and alluded to those points. Could I move on to you and get your perspective on some of the initiatives that have not already been spoken? And I must say that within a week of the announcement of the pandemic, I think there has been a plethora of initiatives that DoT has carried out. Could you summarize some of them which have probably not been highlighted, and also to a large extent try and if possible address some of the challenges that Mr. Matthews and Mr. Balaji also spoke about? But we can start with what is it that we have not seen? I mean, we read a lot about it, we've seen it implemented, Can you also give a perspective from your side on what TRA has done during the COVID crisis, and what is it that is not also coming in the public domain? We can start with that, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to be on this particular platform to express some of my concerns and the way forward. First of all, let me express my gratitude and thanks to all the telecom service providers for their great efforts and dedication to maintain telecom services during the lockdown. As you all know, it came all of a sudden, and there is a complete shift of the traffic from the busy areas to the residential areas. And being a telecom person, I know how difficult it is to maintain the traffic surge in such a circumstances when your mobility and other things are crippled and you are handicapped to carry the new equipments, your staff, diesel, electricity, and so many things. I won't like to deliberate on that. But having said that, it's always, and it's a great thing, and we should be proud of as an Indian, that whenever there are crises, we come up much better than what we were earlier. And that is what precisely has happened. We proved that we have got a lot of capacity and we can work much better than what we were working normally. The coordination, cooperation among all stakeholders, including government, TRI, and other telecom service providers have been marvelous. I will not miss the people who are working behind, and that is infrastructure providers. They have also been working day and night to ensure that their infrastructure availability is continued and they are able to provide uninterrupted services to ensure continued telecom service provisionings. Having said that, there are many lessons which is to be learned as of now. Earlier, there was a thinking that many services cannot be done using online platforms. Now we have visualized and learned that various offices, institutions, organizations, colleges can work very effectively using online services efficiently, effectively, and it will reduce a lot of other complications like traffic on the road and other space demands and pollution, etc., which has been a very, very compelling problems which we are facing as of now. Now, not only that, if we ensure that proper telecom facilities are available, demand is going to be increased, there is no doubt about it. But not only it is used for just communication purpose, but it will be backbone for various different sectors altogether. And therefore, the nature of utilization of the telecom services is going to be drastically changed. It's a movement from uses of telecom services for our communication to uses of telecom services for other business requirements. Once we are talking about business requirement, the requirement of people would be much better quality of service of telecom services. That the expectation from the consumers would be that we are able to deliver much better services. The expectation would be that it should be state of upgradation of the telecom. The delay in the telecom service provision should be drastically reduced. But these are the expectations. When we are talking about these expectations, I also assume that since it will be more utilized for the business purposes, the potential of people to pay for such services will also be higher. And therefore, there is great scope while telecom service providers has to have additional expenditure to upgrade their services, there is good possibility to getting better rate of return on the expenditure what telecom service providers are going to do. Now, in this particular regard, if you look at, I'm having data which suggests that there is drastic increase in the bandwidth consumption, which is in the range of about 15 to 20%. Now, this increase in the bandwidth utilization in itself is a potential which will get more money for the sector as a whole and more investment. Now, let us touch upon certain problems or concerns which has been raised by Mr. Matthew and also by Mr. Balaji. I completely agree that right of way is one of the serious concerns and needs to be addressed on topmost priority basis. We are ourselves highly concerned. In TRI, the Department of Telecommunication is also equally concerned. We have issued several requests to different state governments, and we are continuously in dialogue with all the stakeholders as to how we can tell them that giving right of way will only increase reaching of telecom services to the consumers in much better manner, which will be better not only for consumers but also for the states. Now, we also recognize that fiberization is an important activity which has to be undertaken at a much higher priority to provide the uninterrupted bandwidth requirement to the individuals, and particularly the shift which is happening from geographical point of view as well as from the time domain point of view, as pointed out by Mr. Balaji. This cannot be only done by the telecom service provider. Therefore, TRI has given very recently a recommendation as to how to increase the scope of infrastructure providers and how to attract more people to bring funds in the sector of infrastructure provisioning for telecom, so that we are able to get the fiberization done in the cities on much higher pedestrian as it is happening today. Apart from that, if you look at, we are recognizing that there would be requirement of more funds in the sector. We have recommended certain things earlier. We are emphasizing that. Reduction of the license fee is one of the things. Reduction in the spectrum usage charges is another thing. Resolution of the GST related issues as pointed out by Mr. Balaji. This is also one of the area which we have already recommended for the government to look into this. We have recently permitted higher international termination charges on the calls to the telecom service providers, which will also give certain freedom to the telecom service provider to get more revenue from the international calls. We are also trying to work out on various other options like facilitating provision of more Wi-Fi hotspots using various frameworks, including WANI. We are looking into as to how to facilitate cable operators to provide more broadband to the areas, because people will be using higher bandwidth from the homes, and creating an infrastructure overnight to give them much higher bandwidth will be a difficult task. Therefore, why not to utilize the existing infrastructure where they can provide better fixed line connectivity and better services in coordination with the telecom service provider? That is another area of our concern. TRI has already given forbearance to all the telecom service providers to give the and rather given complete flexibility to bring out the suitable tariff framework. And in this regard, in the change requirement, the telecom service providers are free to bring up new suitable tariff framework to meet the requirement of the consumers, which is now slightly changing its requirement, being more business oriented than for personal usage. So few things are very important. Bandwidth utilization is going to be increased, and that can be managed by having more fiberization. We have been advocating for provision of the higher backhaul spectrum. Our recommendation on B band and E band are already pending with the government, and I hope that the time has come when such recommendation should be accepted on priority basis, and this should be provided. Just for the information of the common users, I can tell V band and E band provides a sort of wireless connectivity which is having very high bandwidth capability to carry the data, and you can say it is something equivalent to having fiber in the air. So these are certain things which are doing, and we are always open to work very closely with all the stakeholders to do whatever is required to help them, to support them, and to ensure that customers get much better services than what they are getting today, and also to ensure that their new demands are completely met to ensure that digitization takes place in real sense. Over to Mr. Purushottam.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. I think those words were really encouraging. I think your points on fiberization, involvement of infrastructure providers, as well as reduction of license fee and SUC would be music to the ears. I think it will be a great initiative, and it will actually help a service provider. I can already see a smile on Mr. Matthew's face when he heard about it. I'll just, before I come to Mr. Matthews, I'll request Mr. Balaji. I think what Mr. Gupta is mentioning about the capacity utilization, how effectively can providers actually use their existing bandwidth? It's something that I've always had discussion with operators, and I'm sure that it's always a trade-off between capacity, performance, quality metrics, and so many, and also the regulatory requirements. Now, with this new normal that we are talking about, are there any specific? I know this entire discussion with the online streaming platforms and reducing the quality of streaming is one such initiative which will help you to work. Are there any other initiatives that you are thinking will be very relevant in the new normal that will help you to continue to provide your services in a very effective manner, not only from an entertainment perspective, but as Mr. Gupta said, this is going to be a new normal even from a business perspective. So any initiatives that are being carried out, any products, any different kinds of products being introduced by the organization to meet that requirement, Mr. Balaji? I think that will help addressing the point Mr. Gupta mentioned about effectively utilizing the available capacity and products as well.
Mr. Balaji, you are mute.
Yeah, I think you're on mute, Mr. Balaji.
Okay, sorry. Is that can I be heard now?
Yeah, now you're able to hear. Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. So I think Mr. Gupta obviously raised very, very pertinent points, but maybe I'll start with addressing the capacity issue first. Clearly, if you look at it, we now have the largest deployment of massive MIMO technology, over 12,000 such sites in India, to exactly address the issue of the traffic spurt that's happening. And as people will understand, this technology basically allows 8 times the traffic when you compare to traditional FDD spectrum utilization, or even 3 times that of TDD. I think the proactive steps taken by TRAI and DOT several years ago ensured that we moved as a nation, at least on the access side, from being spectrum starved to spectrum surplus. So reasonably there. Okay, so that's one part of it. And then, of course, with the deployment of huge amount of investment that's happened, not just on the equipment side by us, but also our tower companies and the infrastructure players, it's ensured that the density of towers has come down, and therefore, to that extent, even though we have a lot of issues on the ground with the local administrations, the state governments, we've been able to kind of address the capacity issue to a great extent. Now it comes to innovation, and the innovation obviously comes in multiple fashions. On one hand, if you look at it, the support that we provide as industry, as VIL to enterprises are actually on multiple fronts. First and foremost, we've been working and preparing for a long time, and therefore it has been easy for us to execute on business continuity plans that they actually are able to carry on their business. Then on top of that, when you look at essential services on healthcare, banking, and online education being driven more remote, the fact that we've been planning for this and the fact that we have virtualized our networks, done a lot more cloudification, and therefore have the ability at the core to keep raising the capacity and also available applications has ensured that we are able to do this quite effectively. Then, of course, the fact that we've actually tied up with a lot of the IT solutions companies in order to make sure, for example, for small and business enterprises, we're able to provide cloud-based collaborative tools, whether it's Office 365 or G Suites, whether it's providing enterprise-grade conferencing facilities, and also affordable cloud-based storage as you pay kind of models. We've done what we could to make sure that that works out quite well. Actually, we've also collaborated with broader industries. So if you look at it, we've even gone ahead and tied up with entities like CII that have a tech, where they have a tech Saksham program for SMEs, which look at not just the technology needs and the connectivity needs, but also talks about how do they help with technology upgradation, how do they help with skilling, etc. So we even looked at those partnerships in order to make sure that we can deal with these kind of topics on a going forward basis. And so I think in a way, what I would say is that whether it's providing innovative net solutions, which are on capacity, on business modeling, as I said, pay as you grow, whether it's cloud-based, on tap, on go solutions for productivity tools, for accounting tools, or for actually applications that are real time, like education and telemedicine. I think all of these are a suite of applications that we're working on. Then, of course, partnership with a lot of the players who are in the digital payment space and in the e-commerce space is something that we are also actively pursuing as industry, as a company, as VIL is doing that as well. And so whether it's the collaboration that we've got with Paytm or other organizations, all of these are basically ensuring that more and more we're able to provide the solutions that are more the need of the market, both from the consumer point of view, but also the enterprise side. And hopefully, as we add more and more value to the core business of the enterprises, more should be our ability to therefore, derive more revenue streams. But that said, the connectivity platform, the connectivity as a service itself is an extremely critical one. And I cannot overemphasize the fact that even on that one, there is a need for kind of addressing the price levels there, because that will ensure that connectivity as a service, whether it's provided by us in part, but whether it's provided by the technology companies that provide us the technology, or whether it's the tower companies that who make the investment for the rentals that we pay them, also are able to make sure that they work on a sustainable basis, because connectivity by itself is a service that needs to be paid for. So we are so grateful that PRI has in fact started a consultation on flow pricing. I'm sure at some stage it will be addressed, but I think while there are a lot of innovation that will pay for themselves, but they sit on top of a connectivity layer that needs to be also robust. And I think access spectrum relatively well taken care of. I think what very rightly Mr. Gupta has talked about, E and V band, which is fiber in the air. I think that reform, if it is done quickly, will go a long way in order to make sure that the backhaul, where we are struggling a lot and where fiberization will take its time, will take a few years. So while that catches up, as long as E and V is sorted out, it'll be in very good shape. Thank you, Purushottam.
Thank you, Mr. Balaji. I think those are very relevant disturbance. Mr. Matthews, I'll just quickly cover, go up to you. There is a point, first of all, your reaction on what Mr. Gupta said. I think Mr. Gupta addressed a lot of issues that you had, a lot of challenges that you had raised, and his assurance in taking it upfront. And I think there is fair amount of recognition of the role of telcos. So my question to you is specifically, on revisiting some of the price structures and the pricing. So Balaji referred to a consulting paper as well, and dialogue that is happening. The question to you is, firstly, in terms of the time that will be required for in doing all these things, as well as when it comes to pricing, how do you think that the telecom service providers can work collaboratively with TRAI, because the prices, as you know, are actually at a reasonably lower limit. How can there be a rationalization of these prices considering the amount of services that are being rendered and the nature and the quality of services being rendered? Any views on that? And also the reaction to what Mr. Gupta has already acknowledged as challenges.
Puru, I think the TRAI has been quite forward-looking in these matters. Let me sort of just give you an example. Several years ago, I think all the way back to 2014, the TRAI had suo moto raised the issue of AGR. Now, if we had solved the problem of AGR then, as per the recommendations of the regulator, I don't believe we would have had this much of a problem that we are facing today vis-a-vis what the court has ruled on. So that was the regulator raised the issue, had given recommendations, that said how to go about it. Just language. Again, the regulator indications as what must happen in terms of the spectrum usage charges. They've indicated how it has to go, kind of a glide path as to what that needs to happen. We've talked about license fee. So again, the regulator has been very forward-looking in terms of what it has recommended. All right, their frustration is that it sort of gets hung up somewhere and doesn't get taken further. Now, Mr. Gupta has talked about tariffs. We are very happy that we are presently in an area of forbearance, and that we believe is appropriate. We have asked for certain instances when we believe there may be some breakdown in market dynamics. That is clearly the imperative and the responsibility of the regulator to take a look, and that's what we're asking for. Say, please, given the dynamics in the marketplace, vis-a-vis data pricing, can you take a look? Now, let me just talk about this whole issue of the pricing perspective. One of the things that our operators are absolutely committed to, Guru, is affordability. It is not to say that you're going to get it cheap, but it will always be affordability. Now, let me give you a criteria, right? About 7-8 years ago, when we were looking at the average income per citizen in India, right? That was about $1,600 US. All right, so we're talking apples to apples now, US dollars. 1,600 was the average income per citizen in India. At that point, the consumer was spending 6% of their total income on telecom related services. Today, you do the same thing. The average income on a dollar basis is 2,600 US dollars. Based on that, today, the average person spends less than 1%, 0.06% on telecom services. So you can see how the consumer surplus has really moved to the benefit of the consumer and away from the operator. And I think that equation and that needle has to come back to a more balanced situation. So clearly, what our operators have indicated is that we probably need to get closer to the 300 rupee ARPU before the industry can begin to start looking at ways to repay the AGR and to meet its commitments going forward. Now, it does not mean that all of that 300 is going to ride on the backs of consumers. As Mr. Gupta has said, clearly, enterprise will continue to contribute greater parts of the equation. So when we talk about an ARPU of 300, we're talking about a combined ARPU. All right. So hopefully, as we look at the mix of revenue streams that are happening, I think we will begin to make sure that affordability, as far as our citizens are concerned, will always be a factor that we will take into account. So I think going forward, yes, operators will continue to optimize the focus things that we have to ensure that the investments are there, because ultimately we have to meet quality of service parameters. On and say that, oh my gosh, we haven't gotten the money, and so please excuse us from meeting the quality of service parameters that are mandated by the regulator. So I think in order to be able to move in the direction of continuously meeting those QoS, right, we have to look at investment. And those investments have to come from the government easing the pressure on network operators by saying, look, this notion that you can extract 30% out of every rupee happens in no other telecom operator in any country. And none of this, by the way, comes back to the, it's not as if the government money and invests it back in some form or fashion. So I think going forward, the points that Mr. Gupta made are well taken. Affordability, we assure you, will always be key. We will understand that, yes, tariffs will continue to optimize so that the investments can be made for the benefit of the consumer, for the type of preparations that we see in these pandemics. These are going to become more frequent. These black swan events are not going to. I think we have to be more and more resilient. Again, going back, that requires investment. So I think everything points towards saying, please take care of the industry, and the industry will take care of the country.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Mr. Gupta, I just want, the context of investment and also the context of rolling out a more sophisticated network. I wanted to actually, pick your brains on the thought process that is being applied by DOT on 5G. And 5G is something that was being discussed very extensively in the context of COVID-19. What do you think the joint initiative that both TRAI, DOT, and operators should actually undertake to reconsider or revisit the thought process around 5G? Any thoughts around that, sir?
See, as far as rollout of 5G is concerned, TRAI has already given recommendations for auction of the relevant spectrum for rollout of 5G. We have also conducted various discussions with telecom service providers. You will appreciate that 5G is very much concerned about the various use cases which will be relevant for the country as a whole, and not the borrowed use cases which may be very relevant in other countries. For that purpose, DOT has already set up various test labs where different use cases are being tested. Even startups have been encouraged to come up with the use cases. There is a requirement of having close coordination between telecom service providers, app developers, some designers, and also the system integrators to work closely and find out what are the most useful use cases for Indian environment. I think things are going very well, and I'm quite hopeful that it will shape in upcoming times very soon. So things are on the track.
Any thoughts on the cost that is associated with the spectrum for 5G? Any that will need to be reworked upon based on the current situation?
TRAI has given its recommendations. We have heard something in the newspaper. We have not got any information on that officially, and therefore I will not like to make any comment on these issues which have not been formally referred back to TRAI.
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to, because Mr. Gupta also mentioned about 5G and the initiative being taken. Mr. Matthews, I think you are very much aware of some of these initiatives. Would you like to specifically talk about the 5G hackathon and the role that telcos and the entire enterprise community is playing? With that, we can have your closing remarks also, and I'll move to Balaji also after that.
Puru, I think one of the things that we need to look forward to is the immense potential that this country offers. We keep on looking at our problems and not looking at our opportunities, and I think we need, as a combined set of thinkers between the government, the private folks, and everybody else involved, how do we capitalize on the phenomenal opportunities that are presented in this country? Now, let me give you a quick example. In the middle of all of this, right, the TRAI held an open house, and they used a locally developed conference app, right? Mr. Gupta will talk about it. I was just blown away by, the sophistication of it, the ease of use of it, the fact that, in a very short period of time, it was put into commercial operations of sorts, right? And we all participated in it. Of course, we could tweak things, but very quickly, how our Indian minds can take these challenges, turn them into operations. We talk about Zoom, right? Well, fine. Now we are seeing our Indian folks step up to the plate. So I think there's plenty of opportunity, and we have to release the animal spirits, if you will. And the hackathon, as you said, Puru, we have, now get this number, 1,000 applications who are telling us that they would like to develop applications for 5G. So yes, don't think that the industry is not focused on it, the operators are not focused on it, the regulator is not DOT. First, they've looked at spectrum issues and spectrum bands and international harmonization of spectrum bands. And so we've been working on it. We've been talking about test beds, and we've been testing, various applications. So all of that is happening. Of course, we'll address the issue of spectrum when it is necessary and appropriate as we go forward. But this hackathon shows us the immense appetite for people, and we had submissions from enterprise, so the big, the Qualcomms of the world and the Microsofts of the world, those types of folks, and students. And when we were looking at this, people who preliminarily looked at their submissions said, "Oh my gosh, this is not kids playing with Lego here. This is real stuff that we are incubated and taken forward so that the Indian mind can reap the benefits of monetizing the value of these new technologies." So with that, I won't take more time, but I could go on about just the future. But it's so bright, I tell you, if we can just put our minds together.
Mr. Balaji, within a minute, can you just summarize your closing remarks? Any last thoughts?
Huge opportunity. As I said, humbled and honored to be part of this sector from the inception. Companies are absolutely stepped up. Wonderful collaboration between regulator, government, operators. Frankly, even on the ground, the amount of support that we've got after some initial teething problems from the state administrations has been fantastic. If you look at the entire industry, they have actually been very supportive of the role that Telecom plays. And I think the opportunities are there for us to capitalize on. No doubt there are some challenges, but I'm sure with the spirit that we have shown already working in crisis to resolve, as Mr. Gupta very rightly said, and with the resilience that is there and the innovation that is there in India, I'm quite confident that we will overcome.
Thank you, Mr. Balaji. Mr. Gupta, any closing remarks from your side?
I will completely agree with the views of Mr. Matthew, and I will say there is a great opportunity lying ahead. We will be working very closely with all of the stakeholders, and I'm quite sure that we will be getting good solutions, and we will win, and the future will be very, very bright for telecom sector as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. I think I need to first thank Mr. Matthews, Mr. Balaji, and Mr. Gupta for your valuable contribution. I think these were extensive. These were extremely insightful, points that you raised. Very, very pertinent. We discussed about the challenges that enterprises were facing, how telecom operators have stepped up and gone beyond, created war rooms, worked collaboratively with other telcos, with the TRAI, with the government to actually bring services on the ground. We spoke about some of the challenges that operators are facing. These are relating to right of way. These are relating to also some aspects of the regulations which need to be taken care of. And most the biggest among them obviously is the financial stability, the liquidity, and some of those challenges. At the same time, Mr. Gupta has acknowledged these challenges and have also pointed out that there are a lot of efforts being taken by not only the regulators to jointly work with government and the DoT to address these issues. I'm looking forward to the next few months where more innovation will come in from the telecom operators and also a lot of support from the regulators. I'm part of the sector for the past 18 years, and I'm very much committed to the sector. I'm very thankful to you and the esteemed guests, esteemed panelists, as well as Telecom to organizing this. Looking forward to more such webinars where the wider community will actually recognize the actual efforts done by telcos, which is an essential service as it is turning out to be in the current scheme of things. Thank you very much.
I just want to at least just a second. I'll just acknowledge the so many people who are past leaders, current leaders, and future leaders who are on the participant list. A huge number of people out there. I thought I must acknowledge their comments and their support as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for everyone who has participated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gupta.
Thank you.
Thank you.